Welcome. Take a moment for a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Settle into the comfort of your space as you allow your body to begin to relax and soften. As the world outside settles into slumber and the moon casts its gentle glow, let us drift back in time to the turn of the 20th century for tonight's bedtime story. Imagine a world bustling with the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, the hum of nascent industry, and the quiet stirrings of profound social change. We will discover the tale of a woman whose dreams were as grand as her ideas. A woman named Elizabeth Magie. Her story, a tapestry woven with vibrant threads of invention, passionate advocacy, and a deep yearning for a fairer society, invites you to relax, let go of the day's worries, and prepare for a journey into the past where ideas took flight and changed the world. Elizabeth Magie, known as Lizzie to her friends, was born in Macomb, Illinois in 1866. Picture the sprawling farmlands and burgeoning towns of that era, a landscape ripe for transformation. This period in American history was marked by profound social and economic shifts, like shifting sands beneath a grand edifice, a backdrop against which Magie's unique vision would take root and flourish. Lizzie Magie was a devoted follower of Henry George, a prominent 19th century reformer and economist. Envision George, a figure of intellectual might, advocating for a single tax on land, a revolutionary concept. Like a beacon in the fog, rooted in the belief that land and natural resources inherently belong to all people and should not be monopolized for private gain. This philosophy, known as Georgism, sought to redistribute wealth and fundamentally challenge the immense power wielded by wealthy landowners, a power often as unyielding as bedrock. Magie herself blossomed into an ambitious iconoclast and a progressive thinker. Her mind a vibrant garden of new ideas, determined to challenge the prevailing views on land ownership, taxation, and even gender roles. Her progressive and iconoclastic spirit was more than just a personal characteristic. It served as the direct ideological blueprint for her most significant invention and her lifelong activism. Her worldview was shaped by a profound concern for systemic injustice from a very young age, making her activism and inventions not casual interests, but core tenets of her being. This early exposure and adoption of Georgist principles directly led her to conceive the Landlord's game as a practical demonstration of the present system of land grabbing, a vivid tableau of economic reality. Her game was not merely a source of amusement. It was a didactic tool, born from her deeply held convictions and a desire to illustrate the economic realities she observed. This highlights how personal history and inherited values can fuel radical innovation and social reform efforts, demonstrating that her game was a direct extension of a family legacy of challenging oppressive systems, foreshadowing her later, broader activism. In early 1904, Elizabeth Magie secured her first patent for the Landlord's game. Imagine the quiet determination in her eyes as she navigated the patent office. A rare woman in a world dominated by men. This achievement was particularly remarkable given the era, as women held less than 1% of all patents at that time. A tiny flicker in a vast, male-dominated landscape. The game was meticulously designed as a practical demonstration of the present system of land grabbing with all its usual outcomes and consequences. A concept so profound that she even referred to it as potentially the game of life, a miniature world reflecting our own. Picture the game board, a square canvas with distinct corner spaces and intervening areas, perhaps colored in muted tones, or marked with simple symbols, each representing a piece of the economic puzzle. The primary objective was to obtain as much wealth or money as possible. A familiar pursuit even in play. Players would move their checkers around the board, starting from Mother Earth, collecting wages as they completed each round. Much like labor performed in the real world. Players would encounter spaces where taxes were paid into a public treasury for life's necessities. And if their funds ran low, they might even find themselves in the poorhouse, a place for those who became broke. There were also railroads and franchises for water and lighting, allowing players to tax others for their use, mirroring public utilities owned by private parties. Imagine the tension of being sent to jail for trespassing on no trespassing land, perhaps owned by a distant Lord Blueblood. What made Magie's game truly revolutionary was its inclusion of two distinct sets of rules, like two diverging paths on a journey. A feature that was often unfortunately lost in its subsequent commercialization. The first set, known as the monopolist rules, focused on individual wealth acquisition through property and rent. Under these rules, Players aimed to own industries, create monopolies, and crush the opponents. A cutthroat race to dominate the board. This version was specifically intended to illustrate the negative consequences and inherent injustices of monopolistic practices, painting a stark picture of unchecked power. In stark contrast, the later version of the game included the prosperity rules, also known as the anti-monopolist rules, aimed for shared prosperity and cooperation. Under these rules, every player benefits when someone acquires wealth, creating a harmonious flow of resources. Imagine players collaborating, their tokens moving in concert. Rent collected on properties shared among all. Wealth was distributed more equally, and communal improvements built together, actively preventing any single player from gaining a monopoly. This version embodied Magie's vision of promoting social equity and a fair economy, a blueprint for a better world. Players were required to agree on which set of rules to follow before beginning the game, transforming it into a direct educational tool for comparing and contrasting different economic systems. A living lesson in every roll of the dice. The design of the Landlord's game, with its two distinct rule sets, represents a sophisticated, pioneering approach to using games as a pedagogical tool for social and economic critique, far beyond simple entertainment. The mere existence of two opposing rule sets was not just a clever game mechanic. It was a deliberate design choice to illustrate contrasting economic ideologies. Players could directly experience the consequences of both monopolistic capitalism and a more cooperative Georgian system. This dual rule structure was the primary mechanism through which Magie intended to educate players about the economic theories of Henry George and the dangers of unchecked capitalism, turning a simple board into a powerful classroom. The game wasn't just about playing. It was about learning and provoking discussion, positioning Magie as a visionary in educational gaming decades before such concepts became mainstream. The Landlord's game initially gained significant popularity among Elizabeth Magie's friends in Maryland. Imagine the lively gatherings, the clinking of game pieces, the animated discussions around the board. After she moved to Chicago in 1906, she co-founded the Economic Game Co. to self-publish her original edition, further expanding its reach like ripples in a pond. The game spread organically, becoming a hit among activists, intellectuals, and particularly college students at prestigious institutions like Harvard, Columbia, and the University of Pennsylvania. Many players, captivated by its engaging mechanics, even made their own homemade boards, perhaps drawn with crude lines and colored with crayons, and transmitted the rules by word of mouth, often unaware of Magie's original invention or patent. This widespread informal dissemination led to it being characterized as a folk game, a shared cultural artifact. Magie's original patent expired in 1921, and although she patented a revised version in 1924 in an attempt to reassert control, the game had already passed beyond her control, like a wild bird taking flight. In the 1930s, an unemployed salesman named Charles Darrow encountered a version of the Landlord's game being played by a group of Quakers. Picture him, perhaps, leaning in, fascinated by the intricate dance of properties and rents. He was captivated by it. Darrow subsequently copied the game, presented it as his own original invention, and sold the rights to Parker Brothers in 1935, notably ignoring Magie's existing patent. A shadow falling over her creation. Parker Brothers initially rejected the game, deeming it too complicated, too technical, and it took too long to play. A dismissive wave of the hand. However, upon learning of its surprisingly strong sales during the 1934 Christmas season, a sudden burst of unexpected success, they reconsidered and ultimately purchased Darrow's version. Parker Brothers actively promoted a romanticized creation myth about Darrow inventing the game in his basement during the Great Depression. This narrative, a carefully crafted fable, perfectly suited the idealized image of the American dream, a lone genius rising from poverty. By April 1935, Parker Brothers had learned that Darrow was not the sole inventor, but nevertheless sought an affidavit from him to bolster their claim to the game. A legal maneuver to secure their narrative. They even proceeded to buy out Magie's 1924 patent for a mere $500 in 1936. A deal that included zero royalties ever. A pittance for a groundbreaking invention. A stark contrast to the millions it would generate. This transaction was later critically described by Ralph Anspach, creator of Anti-Monopoly, as a cover-up, a deliberate act of historical erasure. Magie, understandably furious about the immense commercial success of Monopoly without proper recognition for her invention, took her story to the press in 1936. Imagine her, a determined figure, walking into newspaper offices, her voice firm, her original game board perhaps tucked under her arm. She contacted both the Washington Post and the Washington Evening Star to share her narrative and highlight the striking similarities between her 1904 version and the commercially successful Monopoly game, laying bare the truth. Parker Brothers reportedly offered to publish 2 of her other games as compensation, a hollow promise that seems to have vanished into thin air, as there is no evidence that this promise was ever fulfilled. Crucially, the progressive anti-monopolist side of her game, with its focus on shared prosperity, was largely omitted or de-emphasized in Darrow's and Parker Brothers versions, thereby transforming a tool for social critique into a celebration of wealth accumulation, a profound distortion of her original intent. The organic word of mouth spread of the Landlord's game as a folk game made it highly susceptible to appropriation, illustrating a recurring challenge in intellectual property rights, especially for creators without significant commercial backing. The folk game status meant the game was already widely disseminated and adapted, blurring its origins. This created a fertile ground for someone like Darrow to claim it as his own, as there was no centralized control or clear public awareness of its inventor. This lack of widespread recognition for Magie, combined with the expiration of her original patent, directly enabled Darrow's appropriation. And Parker Brothers' subsequent commercialization and narrative control. Her minimal compensation and the cover-up were direct consequences of this vulnerability and the company's desire to maintain Darrow's rags to riches myth. This story serves as a powerful case study in the history of intellectual property and the often unjust ways in which creative works can be co-opted and their original intent distorted for commercial gain, particularly when the original creator is a marginalized figure. It underscores the historical challenges faced by women inventors in gaining proper credit and compensation. Despite the commercial overshadowing of her original vision, Elizabeth Magie's The Landlord game laid foundational elements for modern board games. She notably popularized the continuous path board game format, a novel concept at the time, breaking away from traditional linear paths and opening up new possibilities for play. Her game also emphasized social and competitive interaction among players, a dynamic that became central to the design of many subsequent board games, fostering connection and strategic thinking. Magie continued to invent games throughout her life, often imbuing them with underlying political principles. This consistent dedication demonstrates her unwavering commitment to using games as educational tools for social change. Even after the profound disappointment she experienced with the commercialization of Monopoly, her continued creation of games with political and educational purposes reveals an unwavering dedication to her core principles and a belief in the power of play as a vehicle for social change. Her commitment was to the message and the educational potential of games, not just their commercial success, shows her profound belief that games could teach children how they may thus get the advantage of their fellows and see clearly the gross injustice of our present land system, empowering young minds to envision a better future. Her original vision of shared prosperity and anti-monopolism, so clearly embodied in the prosperity rules of the Landlord's game, remains a powerful, though often overlooked, part of the game's legacy, a quiet but persistent echo of her ideals. Elizabeth Magie passed away in 1948 at the age of 81. Tragically, at the time of her death, she was not widely credited for her profound impact on the board game community or on American culture. Her name largely absent from the spotlight. It was not until a 1973 lawsuit by Ralph Ansbach, the creator of the game Anti-Monopoly, that her critical and foundational role in the creation of Monopoly was more fully revealed to the public, finally bringing her story into the light. McGee's life serves as an inspiring example of persistent activism and intellectual contribution, even when faced with historical erasure. Her legacy lies not just in inventing a popular game, but in her enduring vision of a more equitable society, a vision she tirelessly promoted through her creations. And so, as the night deepens, we remember Elizabeth Magie, a woman who dared to dream of a fairer world and who used her ingenuity to build a game that was, at its heart, a profound lesson in life. Her story, a testament to resilience and conviction, reminds you that even quiet acts of courage and intellectual pursuit can echo through time, challenging norms and advocating for a more just society. May her story inspire your own dreams, reminding you that the pursuit of fairness and equality is a journey worth taking. Now, rest well, and may your dreams be filled with peace.